Okay, welcome back. Let's begin by slicing up the PSD here. And there are just a few images that we need. One of them is the logo. So let's export that. And I'll export it in my images folder as logo PNG. Next is the timer piece, and I'm just getting rid of all the text. So we'll call this timer piece. And lastly, we need the background. Now, if you have a repeating background like this and you don't really know where to start, you can check out the actual pattern and check out the size. In my case, it's 5 by 8. And you can make a selection of 5 by 8 and then just position it where you think where you see the pattern repeating, right? So in my case, it's something like this. So I'll copy it and create a new file, and I'll call it timer area pattern. Okay, and that's all the images that we need really. The button, the input will be made from CSS, the footer as well. So and now let's move back to Espresso and check out our result here. Okay, we have the logo. Now we can see it, and we can also see this this thin dotted line below it, and that's caused by something that I did. It's caused by this A border bottom. Now, to prevent that from happening with images, I'll use paragraph A. So only the links inside paragraphs will have a border bottom. Let's check it out, and now it's gone. Okay. Now for this, we'll be using Less. I'm sure most of you have heard about it. It basically allows you to write CSS very quickly, and you can use variables and mixins and stuff like that. It's really easy and fun to use. So there are two ways to use it. One is by downloading the Less.js file, which will compile the Less files into CSS files, or you can use something like Live Reload. Live Reload also has an option to compile Sass, Less, stylus, and stuff like that. So what I'm gonna do is show you my Live Reload here. I'm monitoring the folder that I'm working on, and I checked compile Sass, Less, and stuff like that. Click on Options and make sure. Actually, I'll just come back to this once I have a Less file in place. So let's do that. Let's create a new file. We'll call it styles.less. Okay. Let's put in some markup. Okay. And as you can see, styles CSS now appeared because Live Reload automatically compiled the Less file and created a CSS file out of it. Now, if this doesn't happen for you, go back to Live Reload, click on Options, and make sure that you have the correct source for the Less file and the correct output for the Less file. Okay, so now it's time to get to work. So the beauty of Less is that you can work with variables. And I'll show you what I mean. Let's do this. We'll say variables, and we'll do this link. We'll put in the link color. So we'll say 2A 9CCC. This is our link color. Next, let's do a base text. And the base text color is 1F2225. I'm just getting these from the PSD. I have them written down so I don't have to switch back and forth. After that, we need a color for the light text. And that's the text that we have right here in the disclaimer. Right? And the light text will be 90, 90, and 91. Next up, we'll do light border. Oops. And for light border, I'm just grabbing this color right here. And we'll do light BG. That's the footer background. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, let's start off with some typography. So we'll say we'll target the body, and we'll do font. It's gonna be 1M 1.5M for line height. Helvetica New, Arial Helvetica, this looks pretty good. And I'll also use color. Now, instead of using a color value like this, I'm gonna use a variable like base text. And that's the beauty of it. If you want to change the base color, you just change one variable. You don't have to go back in CSS and search for all of those values. So that's pretty cool. Okay, next up, let's deal with the links. So I'll do paragraph, and I'll do this A and a hover, and I'll use color as link. Oops. And let's see what else. I'm gonna use this, and I'm gonna use this, and I'll explain in just a bit. All right, now this is called nesting when you're writing less. It basically means that instead of doing this, so paragraph and target the anchor tags, you do this. It's the exact same thing in less, and this is much easier because you can go ahead and nest elements on multiple levels. If you have a span, for example, you can do that. And the thing about this, the ampersand, is it refers to its parent. So it's not a nested element. If you put this sign and you follow it with hover, for instance, or before or after, or any other pseudo class, then it's going to refer to its parent. So in my case, if I do a hover and then I do a, hover, it's the exact same thing. Only this one is much faster. It's kind of shorthand. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm setting the color of the links, the same one for the normal state and the hover state. And on the hover state, I change it to base text. And now that I think of it, this doesn't really, this isn't necessary, is it? Because I'm changing it on hover. So let's see if I got this right. Yep, there it is. Cool. Okay, let's move on. Let's target the headings. So we'll do heading 1 and heading 2. They both share the font family. So we'll say font family will be Georgia serif. And let's also add margin bottom 1em. Okay. Let's do H1. We'll set a font size of, let's see, what do we have here? We have 36 pixels. So I think we can get away with like 2ems or even 2.5ems. And I'll do a line height of about 3ems. H2, we'll do a font size. Let's see. This is 24 pixels. So 24 by 6. Oops. That's 1.5. So 1.5 ems. And the line height should be about 2 ems. I'm kind of approximating values here. So let's see how that looks. Okay, looking pretty good. But I think 2em could be a bit too much. So instead, let's do 1.2 ems and 1.5 as the line height. All right, that looks a bit better. Okay. Next up, let's target that container class, because we need to position all the elements in the center of the page. So we'll do layout and we'll say container. Okay, we'll give it a width of 100% since we can create a fluid layout. We'll do text align center, and also we'll do margin 0 and auto, just so we center it on the page. Something like that. Okay. Let's see about that logo. So I'm gonna say logo, and I'm gonna target the IMG inside it. I'm gonna say margin, let's do 2ems, top and bottom, 0 on the sides. And nothing's happening. Oh, there we go. Let's give this an ID of logo. All right. Next up is the timer area. So let's go back to our less file, and I'll say timer area, We'll do a background, transparent, images is timer area. What did we call it? Pattern.png, and we're gonna repeat it. There we go. Let's have a quick look, see if our pattern is, yep, it's working. Okay, what else? I'm gonna do text align center, and also I'll target the H1 inside. So H1 color is gonna be white. Let's have a look. Okay, looking pretty good. Now the timer area, the timer will come here, but we'll do that at the very end. Okay, let's deal with the sign up area. Okay, so we'll say sign up, and let's see, we'll target that form wrapper first. So form, I think it was a class, form wrapper. Let's see, we need a border, 1 pixel solid, and I'm gonna use the light border variable. Okay. What else? We need some padding around it. So padding, we need like 8 pixels. So I'll say 8 pixels. Or since we're using ems, let's do 0.5 em. Okay, what else? Let's see how it looks. Okay, let's give it a width of about, I don't know, 300 pixels. So let's see, 300 divided by 16, that's 18.75 ems. So let's round it up to about 20 ems. All right. And let's do some margins, 0 and auto, just so we center it on the page like that. I'm gonna push it down a bit. So instead of 0 margin for top, I'll do 1 em, and I'll also do 1 em on the bottom, but this is not necessary. And I just noticed that the disclaimer shouldn't be inside inside the form wrapper. That was a mistake on my part, sorry. There we go, it should be on the outside like that. Okay, what else? Let's push down this H2. So let's see, form wrapper, div container H2. All right. So we need to go back to the timer area and set margin bottom to 4 ems, just to push down on the H2. All right, something like that. Let's deal with the input there in the form. So I'm gonna say input type equals email, and I'm gonna do this border none, get rid of all the borders. I'm gonna float it to the left because it was centered. What else? We can increase the font size a little bit. Let's do 1em. Let's also add a padding of, let's do 0.5 ems. And let's get rid of that outline. None. Okay. And I think the font is good, but we need to make the whole thing a bit bigger. So instead of 20 ems, we'll do 30 ems. Okay, and since we have like floated elements inside, we'll do overflow hidden, just so we get rid of those floats like this. Okay, next up is the button, the notify me button. So I'm gonna go here and say input type submit, and let's see, what do we have? First of all, we need to float it to the right. And next up, get rid of the border. And we need to apply some gradients and some round corners. And to do that, we'll create something called mixins. So we'll go here and we'll create something like this. Actually, these are called parametric mixins. And they allow us to do something like this. Round, and I'll do radius 5 pixels, and I'll explain in just a bit. Okay, now you can view this as a function that you can call by sending a parameter, and the parameter is radius. So for instance, now I can do this round 3 or 2 pixels, and it's gonna create this WebKit border radius and border radius, and instead of radius it's gonna put 2 pixels. It's very easy. The 5 pixel value you see here is the default. So if we just call round and not give it any parameter, it's going to use 5 pixels. Okay, and since we're working with mixins, let's do one for gradient. So I'll use gradient with 2 variables, 2 parameters, from and to, right? And let's quickly go to CSS3, please. And grab the box gradient. Okay, and we'll replace these with our parameters. Okay, and this one will be 2. Okay, and let's see, we also need something for the inner shadow that we'll use for for the button, for example, or for the footer. So let's do box shadow, and we have more parameters here. One of them is inset, and then we have X, and we have Y, and then we have the blur, which is 1 pixel by default, and then we have the color, which is black by default. Okay, so now all we gotta do is do WebKit box shadow, and instead of putting all these arguments, all these parameters that we transmitted, we can just say arguments, and we'll do this box shadow arguments, and this will take everything that we passed on and put it right here. Okay, so with our mixins complete, we can go back and actually apply them. So first of all, on form wrapper, I want it to have round corners, right? So I'm gonna say dot round, and I can specify the value. Now, since the button will be 5 pixels, I said this before in the PSD, we gotta make the outer box 13 pixels. So I'll say round 13 pixels. So now the box has round corners of 13 pixels. All right, so now for the submit. First of all, we need it to be round. So I'll say round, and that gave it a 5 pixel radius. And I'm gonna apply a gradient, and we'll start with the link color, and it needs to go to a darker color, but it's a color that's based on the link color. All right, so I'm gonna say darken link by 10%. And there you go, a nice gradient. Next up will be color, and I'm gonna use white for it. Okay, and let's see what else. We gotta do a box shadow for that inner shadow. All right, so I'm gonna say inset 0 for X, 2 pixels for Y, so vertically we need 2 pixels, 2 pixels for blur, and the color, I'll do the same, darken the link by 10%. And now it's created the nice inside shadow. And let's also add a bit of padding to it. So padding, I'll do 1em. Font size, we gotta increase that as well to 1em. Let's see, color white. We need text transform, uppercase, and let's check it out. All right, it's starting to look pretty good. Now we need the hover state, and also it needs to look like a button. So we'll say cursor is pointer, and we need a hover effect. So we'll say hover, and we'll do a gradient. And let's see, the gradient should be a lighter color than the existing ones. And since the existing ones the existing gradient goes from link to a slightly darker link, I'm gonna do lighten link by 2%, very, very faint value, very small value, and it's gonna go to lighten actually it's gonna go to link. Now let's see if that works. It kind of works, but I think I'm gonna change things a little bit. I'm gonna create another variable. It's gonna be dark link, and it's gonna be darken the link by 10%. So what I can do now is change this to dark link. Oops. And also change this to dark link, and also change this lighten dark link by 2%. Let's check it out. And there it is. All right. Let's see what else. We need to position this in the middle. All right, so let's see, input type email. Let's see, I have a border, float, I have a padding, outline, width. All right, let's do a margin top of let's do like 0.5 amps, see what happens. Yep, just work with it. I think 0.7 amps should do the trick for me. So now it's positioned on the center. And also let's increase its width. Now the total width of the form wrapper is 30 amps. And the padding is 0.5. So let's try about 15 amps. Let's see how far it goes. Now we can do a bit better than that. We can do 19 amps. Yep, something like this. We also need to leave some room for the button. Okay, next up, the disclaimer text. This will be fairly easy. So we'll do a new section, we'll call it footer. And we'll do footer with an ID of disclaimer. And we'll target the paragraph inside it. Right, so I'm going to do font size of 1M. And I'm going to do color, light text, font style italic, and the text, the font size is way too big. So let's see, actually in Photoshop it's 14 pixels. So if we divide 14 by 16, it gives us 0.875 amps. And that's a bit better. Okay. And next, let's target that span inside. And I'm talking about this little icon right there. Okay, we'll do font size about 1em, and also color, it's gonna take on the link color. And we can make it a bit bigger, like 1.2, something like that. Okay, last one is the actual footer. So I'll say footer, main footer. Let's see if I gave this the proper ID. Yes, I did. So footer, main footer. Let's see, we'll do a quick gradient. We can also do a solid color, but I think I'm gonna do a gradient from light BG to white. And it's a very, very faint gradient. You can barely see it. I'll do a border, actually a border top, 1 pixel solid, and let's try the light border. There you go. And also I'll do a box shadow. And it's gonna be inset. If you don't know what inset means, it's basically you're telling the shadow to be inside the element instead of outside. Excuse me. So inset 0, 2 pixels for Y, 5 pixels for blur, and I'm gonna say darken the light BG by 10%, for instance. Okay, there we go. What else? Let's align the text. So text align center. And let's give it some padding and some margins. So first of all, padding will be 2em on the top and bottom, and margin top 4ems. All right, so we pushed it down and also gave it a nice padding. And also I think I'll decrease the font size on those paragraphs. So I'll say paragraph font size 0.875 ems. Okay, so they are the same font size as the disclaimer text. Okay, what else? I think I want a 1em margin bottom on those paragraphs. And we're done with everything except the actual timer, the most important part. So we'll do that in the next video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.